In my hands are the brand new Ping G440 iron. Now, I am a massive fan of Ping golf clubs. However, the previous iteration of their game improvement iron, the G430, was the only iron I've tested from Ping that I wasn't overly impressed by. They've made some improvements this time round, so let's put it through its paces and see how it performs in my hands as an average swing speed mid-handicap golfer. Let's get stuck in. Right, before we start hitting shots, I should tell you a little bit about the looks of this iron based on my first impressions. And my first impression is it does remind me a lot of the Ping game improvement irons that I've tested over the last couple of years, the G420 or G425, G430. It's got that matted design that's quite typical of Ping game improvement irons over the last couple of years. In terms of the face, you get the number of the iron on the face as well to stop you from accidentally picking the wrong club out your bag and not realizing. The sole is quite thick and chunky, and it definitely gets chunkier as it moves towards the toe end for that maximum amount of forgiveness that we need as higher handicap players. We get the number of the iron on the bottom as well. The badge design is a little bit different this year, and it is a really nice sleek design, a mixture between traditional and a little bit more modern. I really like that little bit of blue flash that you've got in the badge design as well. It's a really nice looking club. One thing that does stand out to me, it definitely feels like there is quite a large amount of offset here, which again will inspire a lot of confidence to the type of golfer that's going to game this. And the one thing I can notice was, although the top line isn't overly thick, I can, just having it here down at address, just start to see that sort of chunkiness of the back of the club start to stick out a little bit. So it might mean as we move up to 6 irons and 5 irons, you would see that a little bit more. If that's something you don't like, then maybe that isn't the right iron for you. But again, if you're someone who wants an iron that inspires a lot of confidence, it's certainly going to help. Now, the one thing I would say, we'll be intrigued to see what happens today, is whenever I've tested with the Ping stock shaft, and I'm a massive fan of Ping, particularly at the top end of the bag, I've never normally got on with it that well in terms of the overall weighting of it. So let's see what happens today. Well, that's great. It's a really interesting sound. I've hit a couple of irons tonight, but that sounded loud and hollow, really, is how it sounded. It almost sounded like I was cracking a nut. And Jesus, if it goes 170 straight out the gate with 114 of ball speed, it feels like it's an absolute power bat. That is a long 7-iron for me, and the reason for that is undoubtedly that spin rate of 3952. It's quite a low spin rate for me. I would like to see these irons get closer to 4,500, but that ball flight is very, very good. Peak height of 97 feet is very, very high for me, and landing at 46 degrees is above that magic 45 that I look for. It's not going to stop as quickly as some other irons based on that one shot, but it's long and it still does have some stopping power based on that strike. Tiny bit thin, but the ball flight and the forgiveness is right up there. Really strong ball flight, and still going to expect some good distances despite that little push to the left. 165, that time the spin rate is right where I would want it, maybe because I did just hit that slight push out to the left, but 2 consistent ball flights right one after the other. Unfortunately, we didn't get the strike location there just to see how good the strike was. Like I say, I'm a big fan of Ping golf clubs. There's that jokey saying, if you can't swing it, ping it right. And that is certainly what I'm like at the top end of the bag with the driver, the fairway woods and the hybrids. And I've said for a while I could absolutely game things like the i530 as a set of irons as well. The only thing for me 2 shots in is I'm not sure if I like the sound of these, but I do love those performance in terms of numbers. Just got ahead of that one and just cut it out there a little bit. Definitely expecting a drop off in distance that time. Still 164. Off of a miss hit. Still spun at 4.4, which is a really good number. We've got the spin rate right where I'd want it now after a couple of shots. And the ball flight, I think 3 in a row is consistent no matter where I've hit it. Very, very good. So first impressions, high forgiveness. Incredibly long, absolutely long, and I think something I've noticed about a couple of the Ping irons over the last few years. My only sort of reservation, well, in terms of spin rates and ball flights, very, very good for a game improvement iron. Yeah, just reservation is just that sound. That's all I can comment on as a potential thing to consider at the moment. They do feel like they want to go incredibly straight though, like, as much as I'm hitting it great tonight, I wouldn't say I've hit it that straight all night, but these do feel like all 3 of them, or 4 of them that I've hit are very straight. And they do feel really consistent. Again, I might be misreading the numbers, but I think the launch, the height and the land angle is really consistent. And bar that first one, I think the spin's been very, very similar too. And they are fast. Ball speeds of 114 in my hands is just as fast as anything I ever test. That's the first one I've hit not great. I've just pull drawn it out the right hand side. So the ball flight's definitely come down there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So yeah, ball flight's come down a little bit, but still above that 87 feet. I just don't like how low launch that is compared to some other game improvement irons, but it's still incredibly long. If you need distance, give them a test. They're fast and they're long. Just turn that over. It started on the line and just drew from there, unfortunately. It's going to be long. Wow, 176. That might be the longest 7-iron I've ever hit. Again, I wouldn't want my 7-iron to go 176 at 3.9 of spin, even with that ball flight. So that's because it's a bad shot on my part, but it's unbelievable. 117 of ball speed because of the nature of the shot. Very, very impressive for speeds and distance. Little bit of an overcorrection on my part, but it's unbelievable ball flight. That might be over 100 feet. It's really high. It is. 168 of carry, spinning at 4.1. Sheesh, they're just long. And that ball flight's great. The one thing I need to be fair on these irons about is now I've hit, half a dozen, 7 or 8 shots, I'm getting used to the sound, and it's maybe not bothering me as much as it did on those first couple, which, there might be other people that just can't get over that. But for me, yeah, now I've hit a couple, not as bothered by it as I was. Such a shame. Again, just started it down there and turned it over. It's going to be long again. It's going to be over 170. It's huge. It is 172.5. Spinning at 4,000. Again, maybe my only reservation here would be, and again, that's me on that one, is for a game improvement iron, if you need a bit more spin, there's going to be other game improvement irons that spin a bit more, but obviously you'll lose distance. But if you need as much help getting distance out of your game improvement iron on a forgiving package, you've got to test these. They're really good. Just leaked that out to the left-hand side. Little bit thin there, and then we do get the jump up in spin that I would like to see. It's still carried at 157, which is, it wasn't a great strike. Like I say, it was a little bit thin, but that is a forgiving golf shot. Like, if you're playing this as a 160 club, 165 club, and you hit it 157 on a bad one, sure, and it spins at 4.8 and stops for you, why wouldn't you game it? It's a really good forgiving shot. Right, come on, let's just finish with one better one than that. That's nice. Just a little, started down the left and stayed there. Let's see what those numbers are to finish. 165 of distance, 4.8 of spin, great ball flights. Right, so I'm done hitting shots with a Ping G440 iron. First impressions in the bay, it's fast and it's long and it delivers a good ball flight. Definitely higher than lots of other game improvement irons, but not the highest that I've tested on my channel. And it does deliver an okay spin rate, not the highest. But what I'd like to do is go home and dissect all that TrackMan data in a little bit more detail and just see if the feels that I'm having in the bay are backed up in the numbers. Let's do that now. Right, time to dive into the data from that Ping G440 batch of shots. Now I did shortly before I started filming hit some shots with my own Mizuno iron for benchmarking purposes, so we can use that to compare against the Ping G440 just to validate the performance of this iron against that baseline. It is worth noting my Mizuno is a player's distance iron versus the Ping G440 being a game improvement iron, so we will call out where we are seeing the expected differences between these two clubs. Now starting on the left hand side, you can see that club head speeds were marginally faster with the Ping G440, whilst ball speeds were 3.6 mile an hour faster. As a result, you can see the smash factor of 1.40, which I think is incredibly high for a 7-iron in my hands, versus the 1.37 that I got with my own Mizuno. Just to show you my strike location on average, you can see it was quite centered with that Ping G440, maybe a fraction towards the heel side ever so slightly, versus with my own Mizuno, it was very similar, but maybe a fraction towards the toe side. And that could be influencing those numbers we've just seen in terms of ball speeds ever so slightly, but I do think it shows you how easy it was for me to get a centered strike out of the Ping G440. Spin rates on average with the Ping G440 weren't as bad as I felt like they were in the bay. However, the number of shots with less than 4,000 RPM of spin is still a concern, especially when considering on the day I got 4,969 of spin with my own Mizuno, which is a high spin rate for me with my Mizuno. So to see it this low as a comparison is a little bit of a concern. However, there is an option here to play the retro lofted spec, and that will dial up the spin rate just a little bit. Equally, if you're the opposite type of player to me and you generate too much spin with your irons and that's costing you distance, this could be a great option. And don't forget you've got that power lofted spec as well. Launch angles and land angles were virtually identical. However, the peak height of 95.1 feet with the Ping G440 was 6.4 feet higher than my own Mizuno. That's despite the Ping G440 actually being 1 degree stronger loft. I think that debunks the myth myth about strong lofted game improvement irons. Yes, you lose a bit of spin, but you don't necessarily lose that strength of ball flight. Just to bring that shot trajectory to life for you side on there, you can see it was also a very consistent ball flight regardless of where I was hitting it. Finally, just to call out, with those faster ball speeds and less spin, it's therefore no surprise that the Ping G440 carried a huge 11.7 yards longer at 168.5 yards versus 156.8 yards with my own Mizuno. Interestingly, we can see that 750 RPM of less spin wasn't offset by the additional peak height that we saw from the Ping G440, as it rolled out and stopped after 11.3 yards, whilst my own Mizuno stopped after 9.6 yards. That's about 17% more rollout with the Ping. However, what I would say is that's very typical for game improvement irons that I test on this channel, and it isn't much different to most of those other options. Finally, just to show you my shot dispersion pattern here, you can see it's doing exactly what you'd expect it to do as a left-handed golfer. If I hit it out a little bit to the left, the spin jumps up and you get that shot that goes a little bit shorter. If I do pull it over to the right, the spin drops down a little bit and you do get that extra bit of distance. So it's doing exactly what you'd expect it to do, left to right, front to back. So now that I've hit the shots and had a chance to dissect all the data, my final thoughts on the Ping G440 iron are I think these could be the best game improvement irons that Ping have released since I started this channel about 3-4 years ago. They definitely have an improved feel, which is something Ping have done on all of their irons over the last couple of years, and we do get some really good game improvement performance. A good level of forgiveness, some exceptional distance, and a good strong ball flight, with the only potential caveat is that we are sacrificing a little bit of spin to get all of those other performance characteristics. But as we've touched on already, you do have those 3 different loft options, and that retro loft would allow you to bump up the spin and just rein in the yardage just a little bit, or equally you've got the power lofted spec if you're the opposite type of player to me when you're watching this video. All that's left for me to say is if you've got some value out of the video and you'd like to give some value back, it's as simple as hitting that thumbs up button. That lets YouTube know that golfers just like you may be interested in watching my video. And if you've not yet watched one of my videos before, hi, I'm Luke, the Weekend Tour Pro. If you'd love to subscribe to my channel, there's a button on screen for you right now, and you can join people like Pete Kenny and all of the other thousands of followers that have been enjoying my content over the last couple of years. Equally, if you think you want to watch another one of my videos, there's 2 options popping up on screen for you right now. Press one of those and you'll be taken to it straight away. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.